So because diversity, equity, and inclusion programs are being shut down all over the country by the government and by private companies, I felt it was important to bring out a book that I read a couple years ago, Critical Race Theory, The Key Writings That Formed a Movement. I read this book when the conservatives were putting out all this misinformation about critical race theory and how it was being taught in elementary school, which it's not. But it really explains everything about the intersections of race and law in America and why we cannot pretend like we live in a colorblind society. And I just want to read something from it. I could read so much of this, but I want to read something in regard to diversity, equity, and inclusion and affirmative action. This particular evocation of a corrupt system of favoritism, seesawing between the deserving and the preferred, caters to an assumption that those who are included by the grace of affirmative action systems are therefore undeserving. For the assumption of inferiority has a life that precedes and unfortunately will probably outlive affirmative action programs. The subtlety of this distinction has terrified even some few blacks in distorting historic assumptions of blacks as inferior into the weird acceptance of their exclusion as its cure. Sitting on university admissions committees, for example, I have seen black candidates who write on their applications comments such as, "Don't admit me if you have to lower your standards." I have never seen the same acutely self-conscious disavowals from students who are admitted because they meet some geographical criterion, such as living in Wyoming or France or some other underrepresented area, or who are older re-entry students or football heroes or alumni children. The question then becomes not how to undo inclusionary affirmative action programs, but rather how to undo the stigma of inferiority, which resides not merely in the label or designation of race, but which, according to our national symbology, is actually embodied in Black presence. If it were truly as simple as erasing labels, then perhaps enough whiteout in our cases and codes would eliminate the problem once and for all. However, it is the ferocious mythology of Blackness, or otherness, as the embodiment of inferiority which persists, whether Blacks are inside or outside particular institutions, and regardless of how they perform. If you haven't gotten this book, I suggest you do. It really, really explains the problems we have in America and how we can fix them.